Hey everyone, this is Brett Favre, Green Bay Packers Super Bowl champion, and you're watching Packers Total Access Live, your daily source for Packers content. Go Packers.
What's up, guys? Welcome into Packers Total Access. My name is Clayton. You can check us out on Packernet.com. Find me on Twitter at Packers_access. Joined alongside Emilio in Tennessee here to talk some Green Bay Packers. Sorry, running a little bit behind. Things got a little hectic at the last second. I was up here at 5 till and ended up having to take care of some stuff and come back up. And 6 minutes late. Emilio, what's going on? The chat's already out of hand.
The chat, I would expect nothing less on this Friday night for the chat to already be off the rails.
Exactly. All right, we got several topics we're going to dive into on tonight's show. A lot of different mock drafts coming out, a lot of different big boards that are shifting around. We're going to hit on some of that stuff as well as some other things. But let's start off with the Patreon group. Emilio, before we do it, you got anything you want to lead off with here, man? Anything at the forefront of your mind that you would like to hit on?
Negative. Wasn't able to listen to any of the good podcasts today, so I don't have anything new yet.
You've kind of been my extra ear to the podcast world, man, since I'm not listening to anything podcast at the moment. So appreciate
I'll be busy next week, so I'll dive into it for sure. We'll find some good nuggets. I know that after that once the Super Bowl's over, they'll be able to dive into it a lot more, and we're going to get a lot more information coming out.
Sounds good. 2-0 for this says no wide receiver one talk, only kicker talk tonight. So, or long snapper, as Holmes said. There you go. So
we talked about that the other night. Go back, do a little digging.
Right. I used to say, hey, man, you hit up the super chat, we'll talk kicker. Now I don't want that to happen anymore. So I'm just like, y'all keep your money. Let's just keep this thing moving. Oh, man. Todd Larson in the Patreon group. Appreciate you over there, Todd. He says, okay, so I only listen to you guys on Autograph, so I'm always behind. But I was listening to Pack a Day podcast, and he was saying that Eric Wilson is a restricted free agent. So the Packers will bring him back on a team-friendly deal. So when I drafted this guy you guys previewed, thank you for that. I wasn't so concerned with linebacker, and the board was telling me that we could pick a few guys up off the street, or if you want to go crazy, you could go free agent Zach Bond from Philadelphia. Not likely, but you never know. Thanks again for this pod. I am completely hooked on all you do. Maybe we can meet up at the draft. I live in Louisiana. I am contemplating going to the draft this year and would love to mock it up. Hey, that would be great, Todd. I was actually on the phone with a couple people around Lambeau today, trying to see if we can get a spot. The goal is for us to meet up on Friday afternoon/evening, like from 2 to 5 before everything gets kicked off, maybe take 2 or 3 hours, hang out. I'm going to make sure we got a couple footballs with us to wing around the yard a little bit as we're outside.
How about these hands?
Somebody's going to leave with a dislocated finger.
Oh, we're diving for it. Yeah, into the parking lot for sure.
No doubt. But yeah, as far as Eric Wilson, I'm not sure where they got that information from, Todd. Everything that I'm seeing, he is an unrestricted free agent. Okay. Matter of fact, I'll pull up. This is from Spot Track, and I'm pretty sure that Over the Cap has it the same way. The top Packers free agents are right here, and you'll notice Eric Wilson is an unrestricted free agent. He's the one there with the 64.3 grade. Outside linebacker at 30 years old. So I'm not sure where they got that info. Maybe this info is wrong, but everything I've heard, Eric Wilson is an unrestricted free agent. Now, if they mistake Eric Wilson for Emmanuel Wilson, he is an exclusive rights free agent. So that might have been who they were talking about. So nothing to worry about to the best of my knowledge on Eric Wilson. He should be back, nothing to worry about on Emmanuel Wilson. He'll be back. Eric Wilson's the one that will have an opportunity to test free agency unless, of course, they come up with a deal before he hits the market, which I don't think he's going to have a whole lot of people pursuing him, to be honest with you, Emilio. 30 years old. I feel like he's most valuable to the Packers as opposed to any other team. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so too. And I mean, you already know the system. You already went through an injury here. I think that you bring him back, let him ride, and just. I mean, I would hate for him to. He's not going to turn into Chris Brooks, though, right? He's not going to be the blocking guy. He's not going to. I feel like we're not going to ask him to do all that. So for him to be a pure runner, let's run another year or two and see where it goes. If not, go get your money if you're tearing it up like that, like you did this past year.
Yeah, completely agree, man. All right, let's move it along. Again, I want to see Eric Wilson back. I really do. It's just,
sure.
Will he get pursued by other teams? That's what's really going to drive that for sure. So, all right. So the next thing was on the Up and Adams show with Kay Adams, as Jordan Love made a comment. They got a lot of people stirring earlier today. I'm going to pop this up just to make sure there's nothing on YouTube. Matter of fact, maybe Matt LaFleur isn't happy about this comment. I don't know, but here's what Jordan Love said on Up and Adams with Kay Adams. It's just about 14 seconds long. He's laughing during it. I don't think it's a huge deal. I did make a comment we'll hit on here in a second, but here we go.
I mean, knowing the Green Bay Packers, I think we're going to go defense, and we'll see. Maybe we'll draft. I don't even know who's out there. Who is even out there?
I think I got all I needed by you saying knowing the Green Bay Packers. You sound like Aaron Rodgers.
I mean, knowing the.
So you could hear Kay say, "Yeah, I think I got all I needed there." You sound like Aaron Rodgers and making that comment, knowing the Green Bay Packers with the first round pick, they'll go defense. And my comment was simply, listen, I love Jordan Love. If Aaron Rodgers made that comment, the media would be all over it. They'd be breathing down his freaking neck, right? We've seen that for so long. And it's one of the reasons why I'm really excited that Jordan Love is the quarterback, that we can kind of put all of that behind us to a certain extent. It is funny, the Aaron Rodgers haters come out of the woodwork. What are you talking about? That's not true. But if we could search your Twitter, like we can go right through your Twitter page and see every negative thing you said about Aaron over the years. So let's not get that twisted there. So you have a problem with what Jordan said there. It kind of feels like to me, Emilio, Jordan, Josh Jacobs, they're kind of putting a little bit of pressure on the front office. Like, hey, man, it'd be nice if y'all, went early on.
And the way you put it is exactly it. Josh covered the offense. Hey, we need a little help here, and D end. And, a DB. Jordan said the same thing. Let's back that up. Obviously, he doesn't want to, like Josh Jacobs didn't say anything about the O-line. Jordan didn't say anything about the guys he's dishing the rock to, right? So, where else would you expect him to do? You get X in front of the mic. X is going to say, hey, we probably need O-line. We probably need wide receiver. So it's just which side of the ball you on? Who are you seeing every day in practice? Who are you sitting in the meeting room with? And I expected him, to say that, and probably a true statement, right? When do we know that we're going to take an offensive line? It's a 50-50 shot either way. No one's going to know until the draft starts.
All right, definitely. Let's see here. J. Cole says, I do think Jordan talked with Josh Jacobs. So it kind of feels like there's been some and who knows, man, maybe with their final exit meeting, maybe Matt LaFleur talked to these guys too and said, hey, we're going to get a couple guys in here. That could be the case as well, right? We don't know for sure. So, but I think it's cool that Jordan is being more vocal. That's the other thing. Matt LaFleur said in his presser, I want Jordan to be a more vocal leader this year. So you can't get mad when he does step up and say something like that, right? Just, kind of push the envelope just a touch. I like what my man IROC says. She's so friggin' cute. My man shooting the shot out here. Hey, watch the show, right? Yeah, no, she don't. So just so I love that he shot his shot here on PTA. Probably the wrong spot to do that, to be honest with you, man. That she's never going to see it. So, but I know there's a lot of gentlemen that believe that that agree with you there as well. Dwayne Stiegel in the hopefully I'm saying that name right in the chat says, if it wasn't for the VA, I wouldn't be able to enjoy the terrible show every day. We appreciate you and thank you for your service.
Absolutely,
Dwayne. Yeah, for sure, man. I'm not sure what branch you served in. It really doesn't matter to me. I kind of put them all together, to be honest with you. One thing I don't like is, and I know there's a lot of friendly banter, I don't like when the different branches of the service kind of take shots at each other. It's like, man, every one of you guys and gals, we owe just the ultimate debt to, that we could sit here and talk about this silly little game of football in a free country because of you men and women. No doubt about that. Philip Rude says, what y'all think about Jamin Dumas Johnson as a linebacker if we wait a little? I like the way he's speaking my language there, by the way. That's how we type. That's how we ride over in Kentucky. Where do we got him at, Amelia? Do you have the board up? If you don't,
yes, I do. Jamin Dumas Johnson. He played East-West Shrine game for Kentucky. We have him at 353.
353. So we got him quite a bit lower. What's bringing him down?
Honestly, he's super consistent, like kind of mid-range. PFF 22, 183, 23, 259, 24 must have been injured or didn't play well, 578. Big board PFF 180, consensus 169. So he's not terrible, but his average brings him way up to 273 after that 24 year.
Got it. Good stuff. And appreciate the question there, Philip, for sure. So let's go on to the Dwayne says go Army. My brother was in the Army. So good stuff, man. Good stuff. So everybody, now it's starting, right? Just kidding. I respect the Coast Guard. Okay, cool. Then the Coast Guard sucks after he said he's in the Army. That's what I'm talking about every time. Every time. All right. So let's move on to the next comment here by Jordan Love. And this was on Kay Adams' show earlier today. Packers quarterback Jordan Love reveals he came back early from his sprained MCL injury, which led to the groin injury. We kind of talked about this all year, Emilio. Let's see what Jordan had to say about that. Because, I mean, obvious the lack of snaps under center, we'll talk about it. But this right here just kind of confirmation of what we talked about pretty much most of the year.
Media Row has become a place where people finally admit how hurt that they were. I know you had an MCL. I know you had a groin. What did you really have to stick through? Tell me.
Yeah, so obviously, like you said, week 1 MCL. So that was the big one that I was battling. Missed 2 games with it. Came back early and was fighting through that. And it was a tough injury. One that it limits you a little bit in what you can do mobility wise. And then a couple weeks after that, ended up straining my groin because of the knee. And so that whole thing just kind of put a damper on things, and something that you're every week, every day in the facility, you're doing the rehab, trying to fight through and just trying to get ready for the game. So a lot of your mindset goes to just trying to get your body right for it. But it's tough. You're not 100%, but we all know no one's ever 100% NFL. So.
All right, so there you go. Obviously, Jordan kind of confirming that, we talked about it earlier in the year. There was rumblings that, when he hurt the groin after the knee, is he injury prone? All of that's tied together, man. You start overcompensating on the other leg. Next thing you know, one leg's bigger than the other. You're pulling a groin on the opposite leg from the sore knee. I mean, Emilio, you've had an ACL before. Yep. It throws everything out of whack, right?
Brutal. I mean, it's once it pops, you're on crutches and it's over for a couple months. Then you got to rehab, getting full extension, getting hyperextension, getting full bend. Obviously, him coming back a couple weeks after is quick. Looking back, we probably would have wanted him to stay out longer, right? But he's a dog. He's a competitor. There's a reason why Brett played 200 plus games consistently back to back, is because he went out there injured and played. So, I mean, it's like a two-headed, double-edged sword there, but it's not something that feels comfortable. You don't trust it. You don't want to put weight on it. You want to brace on it. Then everybody wants a brace off of him. He takes the brace off and you're still not feeling comfortable, because that feels even worse when you don't have the brace on it. You're down a spiral. So I'm happy for him to have the off season, rehab it, get his strength, kind of do what Christian did, get that strength even on both sides and go to town.
Yeah, like you said, man, just knowing he's got a full off season to get everything right, I think it's going to be absolutely huge for Jordan Love and that injury. And again, it's just confirmation of what we've all talked about. It's easy to go, oh man, he sucks, he stinks, what's going on? He's in a slump. Even minus the injury, he could have played better. Don't get me wrong, but the fact that you couldn't go under center as often, you were having to run out of the gun. And listen, they still had a lot of success out of the gun, and they leaned. You notice they leaned on the run a lot more too. And this is that trickle-down effect into the Jaden Reed conversation too, in my opinion. Like, why did Jaden Reed's touches go way down the stretch? Because we're leaning into the run more. We're pressing into the run more, right? And he's your leading receiver, so what happens? Defenses start to hammer down on that slot cross. They start to hammer down on those things that Jaden Reed does well. And I think it's just a compilation of a lot of things. It really is. So
exactly.
Let's see, in the chat here, Blake B says, I watched the segment from Wildy yesterday. He says he only believes there's a 2% chance Jaire comes back next year. That's wild. Now, keep in mind, Wildy was the one that heard Ja make that comment on the exit interview, right? Like as he was leaving the building that last time, it was, he said something along the lines, and I'm paraphrasing here, I don't have anything nice to say. So he didn't want to talk to anybody. So if Wildy says 2% chance, listen, Wildy, I know there's many people that have, things to say about Wildy. I try to watch their show every day. I really enjoy the dynamic between him and Tauscher. I think that I think he's fair. I really do. I also think he's honest. There's some people in the media that are dishonest. I don't think Wildy's a dishonest person. So I don't know why he catches as much heat as he does, other than, gloating about the fact that you're not a Packer fan, talking to Packer fans, right? I don't know why you got to throw that in there. So. But if he says 2% chance Jaire comes back next year, then he's all but gone, in my opinion. I mean, there's got to be a reason he said that, Emilio, because I can't think of another time where he made such a definitive statement, albeit there's a 2% chance, and something didn't kind of fall into place. How are you feeling about that, man?
I still would say I'm 50-50, but just putting 2% on it, it's like, I mean, if you're that confident, it's a 99, right? So I don't know what the 2 is, but yeah, it's. I mean, if it works out for the Packers and it works out for Jaire coming back, if it doesn't work out for one party, there's probably a 50% chance he comes back. If it doesn't work out for both parties, he's gone. I mean, we wanted him to play, didn't play. He was injured. The team knew that. He knew that, and there's not much else he could have done. Right now it's just a bunch of talking and trying to work out if it's gonna be a thing. But if not, where's Jaire? I mean, yeah, he can go to another team, but it's just like, if we wanted to bring in Khalil or Tay wanted to come back or anything like that, you're chasing after the ring. You want to bring the trophy home. He's played here. We've been close. But if you're getting traded or you want to go somewhere else, you're going to another top tier team. And there's maybe 8 to 10 of them a year that are super good, right?
That's a good point. Yeah, Holmes MD1 says Ja is gone, so he believes he's out of here for sure. Blake B said something interesting. He said they were playing a percentages game with Ja and the wide receiver targets. So maybe there's a lot more context to that 2% too, right? Maybe it was something that if you had to choose between the two,
I got you.
A certain wide receiver getting targets and Ja coming back. Thank you for throwing that comment up there, Blake B, because it may not be as cut and dry as it sounds, right? So for sure. J. Cole says if you can get a 2nd and a 7th for Ja, I'd trade him. How do you feel about that, Emilio? What would it take for you to go, hey, that's now worth it to trade Jaire Alexander? I don't think I've ever asked you this question. Just straightforward. What would you want to? You're playing Madden right now, bro. You're building your franchise.
Right.
What do you need for Ja to replace him?
Oh, I'm selling him. I'm selling him up. If we're getting rid of him, I mean, he is water to a speedboat, right? I'm trying to sell this guy to them. I want a 2nd, a 3rd, and a 4th, and I'll take a 2nd, a 3rd, and probably like a 6th. But if I want shots at it. My only problem with the shots at, it is if we're going to do that, I'd rather take all those picks and then let's move up with those to get us higher up, get a couple more talents, sell off some of our 7s, move up and get, 6 solid picks this year, 0 to 100 range rather than, we're spreading out the 11 or 12 we had last year through all 250. That's how I would rather play it, but I would say a 2nd, a 3rd and change.
Gotcha.
Just because I'm not giving him up for free. Right. He's still got talent. He's still skilled. But I forgot what the stat was, but I think Ryan did it one time. Like, he was shut down over 75, PFF grade, something like that. His entire career, no one else has done that, besides he's one season behind him. So I wouldn't do it.
Yeah. And the chat is lit up. Let's see what everybody thinks in there. As Chuck Jaggers says, a 2nd, Aaron went for a 2nd. So he's kind of in that same ballpark with you, thinking at least a 2nd and some more probably. J. Cole says he wants a 2nd. Ron Sanville said he'd do it for a 3. All right. Chris N says with Jaire's injury history, teams will wait until he's cut. Now, I think that's a valid point.
But then once he gets picked up, we would get comp pick, right?
You would, depending on the contract and depending on how much you sign in free agency. Gotcha. Like if you go out and get someone kind of equal in value, it's my understanding that there's some kind of an offset there. So, it's interesting because with his injury history, again, I always try to flip it when people make it sound like it's just so cut and dry. Hey, yeah, just trade him for this. The team will do that. Would you trade for that? Put yourself in their shoes, right? And that's where I run into problems because, like, if I'm the Carolina Panthers and the Packers approach me and say, hey, man, would you like Jaire Alexander? I'd go, all right, this dude's played less than 50% of the snaps in the last 3 years. He's 28. I think he's going to be 29 by the end of the season, maybe, or maybe it's just 28. Let's say 28. And he's got a big cap number. And it's going to be hard for me to give up a second, if I'm being completely honest. Just looking at it from their perspective. Now, our franchise is stupid enough to do that? Yeah. Look at Cleveland.
Yeah.
Cleveland is supposed. Anytime I think, man, nobody's willing to do that, I think maybe Cleveland would. That's it's the outlier, but at the same time, man.
Think of it. Thinking of an injured player as like a used car, Clay. Are you thinking it's like got just a rusty undercarriage? You know, the frames hit it. We can get a couple, 50,000 out of it, or is this something? Or is it something that's? Or is it something that like there's a salvage title? It got.
You broke me. You completely broke me. I mean, you said rusty undercarriage. All I thought is, I bet that's what Jacob's dealing with at the office tonight. It's a rusty undercarriage.
Okay, but like thinking about a player like that, man, would it be more like a salvage title or a used car? And out of the draft, it's a new car, right? I think Ja would be salvage at this point. I mean, or is he used? Like, I mean. Looking at, I lost you, didn't I?
Rusty undercarriage. That needs to be somebody's fantasy football team next year. I will pay the entry fee to get you into the fantasy football league. All right, I'm going to reserve one spot for my team, and I'm going to let somebody else run it. And I've already got the name down. Please don't let me forget, chat. Rusty undercarriage is going to be the team name. All right. Emilio said, "Screw it. I'm going back to the board." He's back working on the board.
Yeah.
All right, let's see here. 2-0 for this is actually, let's come back to that one because it's kind of off topic. We got to that one late. Jake Shavink says, I don't think Green Bay gets more than a 3. That seems a little more reasonable, a little more realistic based off the injury. If he had no injury history, man, I'm with you guys. Like probably a first-round pick, maybe a first or a second. Mm-hmm. But the injury is what's setting me off a little bit. Chris C says, use him to trade for Myles Garrett. That's interesting because, again, that's the Cleveland Browns. Right? If Myles Garrett holds their feet to the fire, right? The problem there is there's no like, hey, we'll eat a portion of the cap, that type of thing, because everything has already been forced ahead. It's been kind of pushed ahead, but pushed back, if that makes sense, on the back burner in terms of cap hit and converting salary to guaranteed and optional bonus. So the Browns are in a tough spot there, man. I mean, we said it right off the bat. They'll figure out a way to make the worst possible decision, but that's probably the toughest trade of all these to get done. It really is, of the players that might potentially be traded just because of the guaranteed money. But Chris, I'm with you there. If you traded Jaire Alexander and maybe a draft pick for Myles Garrett, and if the contract stays the way it is and that optional aspect does not carry with the Packers, you're looking at him on a Russell Wilson type deal, like less than $2 million or something, which is crazy. So I'd be eager to see what actually carries over. And I'm sure the information's out there. I'm just not going to – I try not to waste a whole lot of time, Emilio, like digging into things that may happen as opposed to what's in front of us, what's in the pocket right now.
Well, what do you think about this, Clay? IROC, if he had no injury history, we wouldn't be talking about trading him.
That's a very good point. Very good point, IROC. Because he wouldn't have got frustrated. We wouldn't be frustrated.
Hey, Ja, your numbers were down this year, and we're just going to restructure the contract. We're gonna chase after the Super Bowl together. You, me, and the Green Bay Packers, and we're off. Like that's probably what that talk would have gone like. It just sucks, man. Injuries are part of the game.
Yeah, it really is. And he was such a fun player. We're saying it like he's already gone. Watch him play for the Packers would be hilarious. Watch him play all 17 games too. That would be just absolutely hilarious.
Just here to tell you, Packers back.
You heard it from a fan right here.
Oh, man.
I almost did it. I'm trying, Tim. I'm trying.
Tim's got it down, dude. No doubt. Prince says, I'd take just a second, but if they can restructure, I'd be okay with him back. See, that's kind of where I was at for the longest time, Prince, was like, restructure the deal, give him a little bit more guaranteed money to lower the cap number and maybe tack in some incentive where he can make that full money back, full amount back if he is healthy and if he performs. But man, it just seems like based off, if that Wildy comment wasn't taken out of context, that along with job staying quiet, someone had mentioned here that here we go, Holmes MD1, the fact that we have not heard a peep from Ja or his agent on social media, he's out. I think there's a little something to that as well. Could be.
Or they just told him, "Hey, Josh, stay off." Like, there's no you don't have to put everything out there for, you don't have to follow him hourly to see what's going on, right? Let the man enjoy his summer, figure out what's going to happen, because he's still under contract, right? We still, theoretically, if we didn't do absolutely anything, he would suit up and play for us next year.
That's true. Yep.
If you just took your hands off and said, "I'm not touching it," he would play for the Packers next year. That's why I'm saying, like, how that's where my lean is. Like, all right, he's either going to get cut or we're trading him like right off the bat. I just don't see it. I mean,
yeah. No, you're right, man. The Packers could just not speak on it. And, hey, Jaire's under contract. We expect him back and force him to come back. Now, here's the problem with that, in my opinion, is like, what if he causes problems like he kind of did in the past? What if he goes out there week 1 million and says, "I'm a captain"? He walks to the 50.
I wouldn't see him causing problems if they let him walk right back into the season and say, "I'm not touching your funds." And
that's a good point.
Yeah, come in here and play football for the Packers, man. We want you to be in Green Bay. And come in and just show up and play your game. We're not going to touch anything. We just want you to play healthy and play hard. Like, that's it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Preston Meyer with the super chat. Thank you so much, Preston. We appreciate you, buddy. He says, do you think it's a fireable offense if Goody doesn't get either Garrett, Mack, Adams, especially with his, quote, sense of urgency comments, and Garrett lands somewhere in the division? Man, I would not be surprised if Garrett landed in the division. I wouldn't.
That would be terrible.
It would, but I would not. It wouldn't surprise me. Now, do I think it's a fireable offense if Goody doesn't land one of those guys? No. Goody has gotten, and I'm not saying I 100% agree with what I'm about to say. I'm just kind of speaking in general, kind of a bird's eye view of everything. He's got a lot of credit with this organization, the way he's built the roster. I mean, you're talking about a team that went to the playoffs back-to-back years with the youngest roster in the league. You gotta have talent to be the youngest roster in the league and go to the playoffs 2 years in a row, right? So with that being said, is it more Matt LaFleur? Is it more the players? Probably a combination of both, I'm sure. But to answer your question, Preston, I don't think it would be a fireable offense. Now, when you're talking Myles Garrett, right, I would love to have Myles Garrett. I would. But what are you willing to give up? That's the big thing. You got a guy that's 30 years old, right? Approaching 30, or is already 30, I believe. If you're willing to give up, let's say a first and a third, right? Okay, you got to be willing to give up some significant football players. Like those picks turn into players, right? The first what's odd, Emilio, and maybe this kind of caters to Preston's point here. When you mentioned the first round players that we drafted and said, "Oh man, we would have missed out on him for that." Doesn't sound too bad. Yeah. You're thinking Quay Walker, right? You think Devontae Wyatt, which Devontae Wyatt, they love Devontae Wyatt. Don't get me wrong. He's the best, as Goody said, the most consistent interior pass rusher we got, and it's true. The numbers prove that, right? When it comes to, is it a fireable offense? Would you trade a first rounder? Those guys we mentioned, I would be okay with that. Now, the third rounder gets a little interesting because you got to throw Tucker Kraft into that conversation, right? That's the player you would have missed out on. Now, you say Marshawn Lloyd because that's the most recent third rounder, right? That feels a little more, a little easier pill to swallow, if you will. So, I don't know. What do you think about that, man? What do you think about the sense of urgency comment there? And obviously, is it a fireable offense if Goody doesn't get one of those three guys? Because the other thing, Khalil Mack makes the most sense for me because you can just go get him in free agency like you did, Xavier McKinney.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you. I think we've been on that for a while. Mack's the guy there, but I mean, you think about it. If it was, if you were to give up Tucker Kraft and Marshawn Lloyd got hurt, he wasn't on the roster. Jordan Morgan got hurt. He wasn't, think about it when we get to the 53, when we only can have 48 suit up. Like at some point we're going to have to pick a player. That's where I think, I would love Goody to go for somebody like that. Let's get a big name. Let's get someone that's going to be on the field if that's the case. But I don't believe, that it's a fireable offense just because Goody has done, everything and more for this team. It's not like he hasn't tried. He's gone through an older quarterback, starting a new regime with his quarterback, his coach sort of thing. And, they're trying it all new. And I don't see a problem with the way it's heading. I think the ship's going, the right course. It's not like we're not steering it in circles. That's for sure.
Right. Yeah. So the fireable offense is the part I'm having trouble with, Preston. I don't think there's any scenario where Goody gets fired this year, probably even next year.
Because you think about like what you watch Hard Knocks, right? That Giants GM, like Saquon, if he goes to the Eagles, I'm not going to sleep at night. Like that's not going to. If he goes somewhere in the league, all right, no problem. But he didn't leave the Packers, right? It's not Goody's fault if Miles ends up in the division because it didn't work out for the Packers to get him.
And like what Preston's saying here too, if you don't get any of these guys after saying, "Hey, man, we got a sense of urgency,"
that's true. That's very true.
I understand what you're saying. Like it's like, yeah, that's a
that
bad
part's
look.
super true.
Yeah, it's the same thing you said about Aaron Jones last year. Like he basically made it say, "Hey, we're going to do whatever we got to do to get Aaron Jones back in that building." Next thing you know, he's cut. It's like, whoa! I thought Goody said, "It's lion season, baby. It's lion season, no doubt." So, Preston, thank you for the super chat, man. Great conversation there. Great conversation starter, I should say. Let's see here. Chuck in the chat says, second ain't happening. I damn near guarantee it. All right. Philip Root says second and a seventh is Rich. That's kind of where I'm at. J. Cole, you're giving up your top corner. I want a second. And I can understand that too. From the Packers' perspective, it makes all the sense in the world, but you got to put yourself in the shoes of the other team, right? And it doesn't matter what you think he's worth. His worth is what someone else is willing to pay for him, right? That's really what it comes down to. Holmes MD1 says Khalil Mack over Max Crosby. I could not agree more. Just because you don't have to give up draft capital. If Max Crosby and Khalil Mack were both free agents, I'd probably lean toward Crosby. But the fact that you can get a similar player, albeit he's older, like a 1 to 2 year rental, but not have to give up draft compensation, I think that's the difference maker for me, Emilio. What about you, man? Khalil Mack or Max Crosby? Which would you prefer there, man?
Bulls, baby. Bring Khalil Mack. Yeah, I said Bulls. Yeah, bring Khalil Mack home, man. Crosby's a dog, but let's get the older guy in here, get him out for 1-2 years, and let's roll. If we get him a Lombardi, perfect. If not, he helped teach LVN. Yeah, that's what I'm like. Hey, everybody's cutting LVN off. We're not talking about him. If he explodes, what happens? If each of these guys grow a little bit each year, that's where we're trying to get to. I think that you get Tay was in. Tay teaches the wide receivers. Matt could teach the D linemen. Once they're out of there, that you still have that work ethic, that drive that got him to be how great he was built into the team now, and then you just keep moving forward with it.
Yeah, definitely. For me though, it's Mack over Crosby. Harry Cheese says, "What about Chase Young?" Chase Young is interesting because when he came out of college, Emilio, he was a stud, right? Yeah. Ohio State, if I remember correctly, right? I remember him being like the top dog, right? But now he's kind of bounced around, and you don't ever hear him in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year. You don't hear him in the conversation of, man, this dude's absolutely dominating and wrecking an offensive game plan. I could be wrong there. Maybe it's best to look up the PFF grade. So let me do that while you give your take on Chase Young. Because, again, man, that's a guy that I remember coming out of college. He was a stud. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, he was a freak coming out of college. I think he went to Washington last or second to last, right? I know he's bounced around like you said. I think that's it's one of those first rounders that just could never find a home. Is this something that can happen later on in his career? Absolutely. I guess it's for the right price. Let's see how he would fit in. Believe he's played DN the whole time, right? Or did he play a little stand-up outside backer?
He played edge the whole time. And this is going to surprise some folks here, man. Because you think, okay, he's been dominant. But again, why is he bounced around if he's a dominant player, right? Let's look at the PFF grades here. In 2020, a 87.2, then a 75, a 78, a 74. And then in New Orleans this year, on 740 snaps, he dropped to a 66.4. So just based off the PFF grade, Harry Cheese, and I'd have to watch the tape and really do an extensive deep dive. If he doesn't have that 90 coverage grade there where he was probably dropping in a fire zone blitz, that grade's even lower, So that would be a no for me. Of course, it all comes down to price. right? If you can get him close to a minimum, I'd be okay with having him on the roster. But if you're talking about paying him starter money at the edge position, which is obviously a premium position that comes with a premium price tag, it's going to be a no for me.
How many snaps did he? Okay, 770. Yeah, I was going to say, because I mean, the only thing that he is bringing is pressures, right? If you're looking at it that way, he is getting 60 some pressures, but on 800 attempts, I mean, I don't know, man. I think I'd still. It's just like I don't want to take up a spot for somebody coming forward that we have, already drafted, lined up on this team. I would unless it was an X, 25-year-old ready to go,
right?
And like what dropped into free agency, like isn't Max Crosby or Chase Young? He's going to be a free agent, or he's part of New Orleans?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm pretty sure he's going to be a free agent, right?
Okay.
I could be wrong. I can double check.
And Max is still going to be on the Raiders, correct? Or is he?
He's still
so I mean, it's like that's what I'm saying. Like all the talk about like the players leaving their teams, like Myles Garrett's still on the Browns, like he's still under contract. Max Crosby's still under. It's like you can say a lot, but if you're, if you sign that paper, you're still part of that team.
Yeah, let me see if I can find Chase Young real quick and just see if he's under contract. I'm pretty sure he's going to be a free agent. I'm almost positive here. Let's see. Yeah, wow. They mortgaged the future too. Holy cow, listen to this, dude. So in 2025, he's an unrestricted free agent. And if he hits the open market, they don't get a deal done before the new league year. His cap hit is going to be $9.1 million with him not on the roster. They did 4 avoidable years. 4 avoidable years, but that's how the Saints do business.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's what I'm saying. I'd rather us come out on top of our money. Let's roll some more over. Let's get ahead of the 8 ball so that like if something does happen, all right, cool. I know we can clean up the money and get it and go. But if not, let's just try to get ahead. Try to, be in the black, be in the green, be on the right side of it, so that if you do need to pull the trigger and go forward with it for a couple of years, you got that spot.
Yeah, I mean, every chance, and that's what we're talking about. When you mention restructuring contracts, people go, well, we don't need to, we got cap space. That's not the point. It's cash over cap. And it's real simple. You're basically telling a player, I'm going to give you guaranteed cash for us to lower the overall number. So we're going to convert money that's not guaranteed to a signing bonus and give you that check today. Player's going to go, yeah, that's more security. Makes sense. They'll take less money for more security, which is a payment right now in a signing bonus form. And when you do that, you're lowering the overall cap number. So these restructures we're talking about with Rashawn Gary, Jaire Alexander, Jordan Love, Elton Jenkins, Xavier McKinney, Kenny Clark, and Josh Jacobs, look for those guys, a good chunk of those guys to get restructured. And the reason being, lowering the cap number, even if you don't use it, roll it into next year, like Emilio's saying. And what that does is it constantly puts you in a position where you can overpay for great, but you just got to make sure you're not overpaying for good. That's the main thing, because that's where teams really get themselves in trouble. You hear about it all the time, Emilio. These teams will go all in, and yeah, I remember the Eagles years ago, the dream team they put together with it was Vince Young and a bunch of different players. Like, holy cow, look at all these names. And they couldn't sniff success. I'm just telling you. And they couldn't sniff the rusty undercarriage. But so listen, it's not a guarantee to go out and just get a bunch of good players, right? You be willing to overpay for great, build a great culture, have a damn good coaching staff, and you got to have a solid quarterback. That's the key to winning. Focus on those tier 1 positions. And that's what we've been talking about all night. Your Chase Young, edge defender, tier 1, right? Myles Garrett, edge defender, arguably the best edge defender in the game, right? Probably is. I don't even know if it's arguable right now. Khalil Mack, top 3, top 5 edge defender. All those type of play. You notice we don't mention any 3 techs. There's none available.
Right.
Telling you, man, to me, it's more important than edge. Edge defenders will come available over the years. It's very rare that a dominant 3 tech, it's just, hey, this team's looking to trade them, because it's going to be a snowball's chance in hell in finding the next great 3 tech, because they are not growing on trees. There's no doubt about it.
So you got to take multiple shots at it.
You got to, man. You got to keep swinging until you find that Jalen Carter or that, whoever, insert a name, Aaron Donald, right? Aaron Donald, man. Could you imagine? Let me put it this way. Could you imagine if Aaron Donald was our 3-tech in the Aaron Rodgers years? Oh, my God, bro. Like, with the way Aaron protected the football, Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Donald was just a dominant force in that 3-tech. He could play everywhere. They could put him all over the place.
What do the Chiefs have? Pat Mahomes and 1 D tackle.
Chris Jones. That's it. And Chris Jones will play wide 9. He'll play 7. He'll play 5. He'll go to the 1. He'll line up in a 0 if it makes sense for the game plan. And he's just he's a game wrecker, man. He really is. So, yeah, got to keep swinging. And that's why most mock drafts are steered toward that direction of, hey, let's focus on defensive tackle earlier. It's kind of tongue in cheek, but it's what Jordan was saying earlier. Like, knowing the Packers will probably go defense, right? Because again, if you can get a top 3-tech in the draft, one of those top guys, it's definitely worth it. 2-0 for this says Jordan isn't a guy for excuses. Say what you will, but he's all business. 2-0 for this. Jordan Love, that dude is everything I want in a quarterback. Like, his teammates adore him. He's kind of a quiet leader, which I really, really like. I like the fact that he's not just mouthing off all the time. He's not like the Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers was a great quarterback. Boy, he wouldn't shut his mouth, and he never won a damn thing.
Dude, if I'm going to go work for somebody, I want somebody in the trenches, that's doing that same work, stacking the same block kind of thing. That's putting in that work. That's a leader right there. Someone leading the charge on the first horse going into battle type thing.
Yeah, exactly. 2-0 for this says, don't touch the rusty undercarriage without being up to date on your tetanus shot. So there you go. That's great advice there. You heard it from a fan right here. Jake Shavink says, Darius Alexander could be Green Bay's Chris Jones. Darius Alexander is fascinating, man. Let me put our board up on
He was the best guy around.
What murder? Let's see here. Darius Alexander. Because you guys know how our board is built, right? We when we built our board this year, we kind of showed you how the sausage was made. And I'm really glad we did that in this series. So you're going to understand exactly why he's so low on our board, okay? Darius Alexander out of Toledo at the Senior Bowl, right? He got the Senior Bowl bonus. He was dominant at the Senior Bowl. Everybody was talking about him, right? Senior Bowl practices. 109 PFF 2022. So he was the 109th best defensive tackle in 2022. He was the 43rd best in 23. He was the 4th best in 24. Like, when you look at those numbers alone right there, Amelia, you think, okay, this dude's going to be a top 20 prospect, right? Like, he's going to be top 20 to top 40, somewhere in that range. The PFF big board at the end of the college football season had him at 175, and you go, maybe it's just the PFF big board. The consensus big board had him at 193. So when the season wrapped up, right, he was looked at by the consensus big board, which is basically compiled of a bunch of different people putting out their big board saying, here's how we got these college players ranked. And the PFF big board, which they never let you behind the curtain to see why the heck was this dude the 4th best defensive lineman this year, but somehow at the end of the college football season, he was 175th on their board, right? I like to put those numbers in early because I want what people thought when the season ended. So now, why is Darius Alexander skyrocketing up the boards?
I was just going to say, Clay, why don't you do this for a little thing? Go to the consensus for the 193. Type in 71. That's where consensus.
That where's that now?
That's where they have him currently, right? Now let's check the number on the far right.
So you said 71. 70 what?
No, I'm sorry, 71.
71. All right, so 71. Notice the number on the right is a 98.8. Now watch it. 68.3.
So then we're going to scroll up to the top here. Who's around 68.3 right now? That's actually Torrey Horton, wide receiver, Colorado State. He's in the 76th spot. They'd be tied.
6. Yeah, so that would put him up to 76. But still, when you hear people talk about Darius Alexander, you would think this dude is, first round pick, right? That's how people are talking about him now. So let's change that back real quick before we forget. Because again, guys, our board isn't trying to go, we're better than everybody else. Look, we got it right. I want everybody's board is constantly changing, and it's constantly gearing toward what's the latest information. I want ours to stay pat. That way we know, okay, our board is kind of a safe board. It's geared around what did people think before the hot machine just absolutely took off. Now, go back to the Senior Bowl conversation. He dominated at the Senior Bowl. Look at the people who've dominated at the Senior Bowl in the past. His former teammate, Quinyon Mitchell, right? People were saying, oh, yeah, well, of course, with Quinyon, he was already ranked at the top of the board. It just kind of solidified it, right? I don't know where DJ's got him, but he did not have him in the top 50. I don't know where he's going to have him, but his initial top 50, he did not have Darius Alexander in the top 50. So I'm eager to see if he bumps him up into the top 50.